Welcome everybody. My name is Vicky Hanna and this is week 1 of 3 weeks in the unit for Diploma of Youth Work with people with mental health issues, CHCMHS001. We have 3 weeks of this unit and there are 3 different assessment tasks for you to do. So when you get your resources, you will have a pre-recording fully of the whole 3 weeks. You will have your copy of some PowerPoint slides, which will be different to the ones that I show you in class because we just take a summary from those. You have the full suite of those, and they're the same ones that I show you in the recording. Week 1, we cover task 1, which is a quiz, which is what I'm about to do now. And we start to introduce what are some of the foundational skills and the key learnings for the unit. Week 2, we will touch on the research report, which is your second assessment task for this. And then week 3 is all role plays, task 3. And task 3 is about 3 different clients, all with mental health presenting issues. And we will give you those scenarios and they will be acted out live in class. And otherwise, you'll be doing these 3 clients in your own time with some support from us, of course, but to make sure that if you're not ready for class, that we can give you some examples. In class, we'll only show you 1 client being recorded, but there's actually 3 clients in this full unit for you to do. So that'll be 3 role plays and the supporting documents that go with that. But look, let's get started on this, and you will be a non-clinical mental health worker. We have another recording, just a class discussion. So you get 2 short recordings, this one and part 2 as well. So before we begin, let's do our acknowledgement to country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And I would like to extend this acknowledgement out to everyone that's in class tonight who identifies as First Nation or Torres Strait Islander persons, and out to our wider learner community who may be watching this recording. So I come to you from Tarrabalang Bunda, which is based in Queensland, often referred to as Bundaberg, but our traditional name is Tarrabalang Bunda, and we are covered by several different lands in the region that we refer to as our Bundaberg region, which covers a 150-kilometre radius. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping as well, just making sure that when we're talking about mental health, that it can have a different effect on people. So be kind to yourself. And if you find that something's a little unsettling, just step away. Do this in shorter pieces. I find 20-minute bites of learning is pretty good. So we work pretty hard in our live classes, and you'll get a longer recording, but I just want to do an overview of some of our care cards for you, some prompts and some of those toolbox talks to be able to do that. So our mental health conversations around our language, and you'll see that some of those will get done in our class tonight as well. Let me just move you through. We speak about these in part 2. We do a plan, we set up who's our support, and we do our in the meantime. This all gets covered in our second recording for tonight. But for this part, I wanted to unpack the micro skills and then just go over and have a brief look and walk you through the resources that you will get for your assessment. And then let's have a look at task 1. So your micro skills are your supportive practice. What ones will help you? So another way of saying role plays, which is your skills assessment, would be your practitioner skills. You are the practitioner, and these are the skills that we need to be able to get clients to open up to us, feel that they can trust us, it's safe, and to be able to share their stories so they can access the supports that you have to offer. So our literacy and our language around mental health is understanding common conditions, warning signs, and what are some support pathways around that? What are those wraparound supports for our clients and our plan? We use non-judgmental language, we avoid labels, we use person first and recovery focus. So when in our second part, we talk about our alliance circle, the person is in the center, and then all the other support sits off that. But it's always about our primary client, which is in Diploma of Youth Work, is our young person. We may work with their families and carers, but they would be secondary clients to us. Always our primary client is that young person. So we work with 12 to 24 years of age in youth work, but we also do early intervention prevention, and we start that from the age 7 to 9 is some of those signs where people might be struggling. There may be a diagnosis there, but from 9 to 11 is now considered our early intervention. And then right through to Gen Y, up to 35 years of age, because they're often our young parents as well of young people. And if we have a parent that was trauma affected or trauma impacted and that has been left untreated or unhealed, then they may be parenting in a mode that could be triggering for their children. So we will often see that intergenerational trauma get passed down as well. So we can't only see the young person, we have to look at the environment, who are their caregivers as well. Try and get a bigger picture so that we can work with them in that individual support space. We use our recovery focused language as well, where hope and healing is. We use cultural awareness, respect mental health perspectives across diverse backgrounds, different cultures in our role plays. We have culture actually comes through. It isn't always your country of origin. It's not always your religion. It's about your North Star, what drives you as a person. So culture, for one scenario in our skills, is a young woman by the name of Jacinta, and she does have a different faith and a different culture. Our second one is a young male called Tony, and Tony's culture comes from his lived experience and his identity around sport. And then our third is that culture that we would align there around that mental health traumatic event that happened for that young person sits around their spiritual connection. And for them, that was their pets. And they were caught up in a natural disaster. So each of them have a common thread, meaning that they have all experienced some traumatic event and they are beyond that event, but they are still impacted by that with their mental health. And that shows up in lots of different ways. And our discussion will talk about what do we see, what do we hear, what can we look for? What are some of those flags or indicators that we would be looking for? We're asking questions of our client, but we're also using our observation skills and we're checking in with their energy and how that might sit with us as well. So we will respect mental health perspectives across those diverse backgrounds. We'll have empathic communication, validate that their emotion is real, we believe them, and distress without overstepping, making it unsafe. Just talking about this can re-injure a client. Having a calm presence, and that's in your tone and your body language, you staying grounded to support that client be regulated. And if they're not, then we co-regulate with our clients. We meet them where they are. How am I checking in? If you've had a big day or you're running on empty, we need to check first before we present to our clients and do what we can, get our head back in that space. Where am I on the window of tolerance? Am I really heightened or am I really low? I like to do that on a scale of 1 to 10 when we're checking in. 1 would represent being really low and flat in their mood, and then 5 would be in that window of tolerance, regulated in the middle, and then heightened would be that 7, 8, 9, 10, really up. But that up could be happiness, euphoria, or it could even be anxiety, but it presents in a different way. So what does that mean? What are we seeing? And are we interpreting that correctly? And what dysregulation looks like when they're too high or too low. So what's some of our supportive questioning? Ask open-ended questions that promote hope and self-determination. All our open-ended questions are our who, our what, our why, our how, and our when. So who, what, how, when, where, and why. Why do you think that's happening? Why have you come here today? What is it that you're hoping to get out of our time? What would be the most helpful? How will I know when you're stuck? They're our open-ended questions so that we can get from our client more than a yes or a no. We're prompting them, but we want them to talk 60% of the time and us 40%, asking those intentional interviewing questions. So these are intake, risk assessment, having a look at the current needs, assessing that. What's the most important work that we could do right now, today, in this moment, in a week, in a month, and in a year? What are those SMART goals that we're looking for? Will be recovery orientated focus. So we'll emphasize their strengths and the possibilities, not the deficits, not the things that they cannot do, but the hope where I wonder what it would look like. So we're prompting. We're not saying a great idea would be this, because that's our great idea. That may not be a great idea for our client. They may not be ready for that. So they may withdraw and shut down and be polite and then leave and go, that's too hard, but not tell you. So we need to stay in that space, make sure that we emphasize their strengths and possibilities, not rush to fix it. Don't see them as a problem that needs a fix. What does hope and healing mean? How could we bring that hope back in rather than the hopelessness? Safety planning, collaborate on strategies for managing that distress or crisis. It could be breath work, so box breathing or infinity breathing, depending on the age of the young person with us. We might have the 5-finger breathing. We might do some creative visualization, closing our eyes, sitting on a cloud, hanging our legs over the side and swinging. And if we safely look down, what could we see? What would that beautiful picture look like for us? So we get our clients to relax so that the information that they take in can land safely. If they're really heightened or really low, if we start talking while they're still in that state of mind or that mood, then we are impacting them even greater. So managing that distress and crisis first, help them find that center, grounded somewhere in that regulated window of tolerance space. Confidentiality with limits, that's about their safety and their security, and you're going to risk assess. If you feel that they're really depressed, then you're going to have to ask those questions. Are they thinking of harming themselves? Have they? How frequently? Have you thought about committing suicide? Have you thought about how you would do that if the answer is yes? And do you have those things around you right now? So that immediately escalates into that high risk area, which we're not going to be counselling. We're going to be staying in that space, and we're going to do a wellbeing check with the medical professional, which would be fire, police or ambulance. So we would ask for ambulance to come and do a wellbeing check for us. So it'll be in the language. I can't go on. There's nothing worth living for. Got to listen to what that is. And if we're unsure, then we need to check. And then it has an action around that, an immediate action. We're not going to be talking about it because we're re-injuring. So we need to make sure that clinically they are safe, and that may require some medication or admission into hospital, where a proper risk assessment will happen. Even if you have done suicide intervention training and have that qualification, if it is not in the scope of your role, your line manager will expect that you will be in touch with them before you start doing any of that work. It's not about your confidence to do that work. It's about the scope of your role. If your role says that you are there to do a home visit, then you will bring in another person to be part of that wellbeing team because of the risk that you just assessed. So when does my duty of care step in and step back? Boundaries with compassion, good, healthy professional boundaries, staying present without becoming enmeshed in what's happening for our client in their distressed state, or over responsible for every single step along the way. Okay, so that's that portion of our slides that I wanted to share with you. And then I would also like to now share just our tasks for this one here. I want to take you over to task 1, which is what we would cover in week 1. Let me just hide that. Okay. So you can see up the top here, it's got the code. We're talking code when we're asking questions about our unit. So the unit you are on is CHCMHS001, work with people with mental health issues. So this is my porthole in Accelerate. Yours might be a different colour. Some learners have green, but this is the admin site. So I have access to your assessments and your page. I can see where you're progressing. If you've had more than one attempt, you get 3 attempts with any of your assessments. And then, of course, we can open up more attempts. There's no penalty whatsoever in having more than one go at something. However, we give you feedback, and if you've got 3 attempts and that feedback isn't landing the way it needs to, we need to go in and see what are we not getting right our end so that we can guide you and help you with that. So there are 13 questions. Some of them are multiple choice, like this one here. So what you've got is you've got an explanation, a description. So each definition, there's an option in the drop-down box below it. So this definition, recognizing symptoms or signs, behavioral changes, functional changes, or changes to quality of life early, and seeking preventative strategies, treatment or methods to improve physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Here, it gives you an option to choose one of those will be the correct answer. You click on that and you align it with your response. So this one here, expected responsibilities, behaviours and role individuals with mental illness play as a member of society in relation to social norms, process, etiquette and values. So that will give you different options. You select one. So that's the very first question. The second one is, which of the following are common characteristics of symptoms that someone with a mental illness may display? So where do you find the answers to these? You find them in your slides, but your most valuable resource is your learner's guide. So you will get a learner's guide for every single unit that you do. In that learner's guide, if you download it as soon as you when you start studying, make sure you open a folder and call it Diploma of Youth Work, and then open subfolders and do a folder for every unit. This unit, CHCMHS001, everything to do with that unit, save it into your folder. So when you get your learner's guide, download that, save it as a document and put it into your folder, and open it up when you're ready to do your questions. Go through the learner's guide and then come over to your assessment, and then go back to your learner's guide. So what you can do is you can copy and you can paste that, and you put that into, when you open up the document, you put it into search, and it will take you into your learner's guide everywhere that this comes up, common characteristics or symptoms that someone with a mental illness may display. Please choose 3 only. If you choose more than 3, your answer will be wrong. So you need to go through and have a look. Right, so I've got to select 3 that are indicators. Now, we talk about some examples of that in our part 2, in our live class, where the learners are being recorded. Question 3, describe the symptoms and characteristics of each of the following types of mental illnesses. What does anxiety disorder look like? What's a description of symptoms and characteristics? Now, the clue with that is do symptoms, and then underneath it, write characteristics and answer each. There are 2 parts to that question, symptoms and. Look for the and tells you that there's 2 parts that you need to answer. Substance use or misuse, obsessive compulsive disorder, and then eating disorder. What are the symptoms and characteristics? If it said or, you could choose one. So a good way of doing that is to put symptoms there and characteristics so that you remind yourself you've got to do both, and that it's not a long narrative so that the assessor's trying to go in there and find it. Be very clear with how you do your answers. Better to be accurate and analytical in how you respond than too much of a narrative. When we write our file notes, they are factual recount of the events that took place. So they're not subjective either. You can write a narrative, but it can only be about what you saw, what you heard, and what the client stated as well. So it's not I think or I feel or making a statement that is an absolute. We would use something like perhaps or maybe or potentially the client could. We don't know because we haven't spent enough time in the role play to evaluate that. And we can't get enough off the written scenario because only the client can answer that for us. So we frame that around potential or possibly. Which of the following are myths about mental health? And a myth means it is untrue. So people with mental health conditions can snap out of it if they just try hard enough. Is that true or is that a myth? And the question is asking you which of the following myths the following are myths about mental health. So a myth would be untrue, which would be this one, but there's more. So I've helped you with 4. Okay, let's scroll down. So you keep going through in legal and ethical terms. What does duty of care mean? It's your area of responsibility. So Legal and ethical. Duty of care refers to the ethical and legal obligations to ensure well-being, safety, and best interests. Duty of care involves solely focusing on one's own interests, or duty of care pertains to offering unsolicited advice. Okay, so there's one of those three that are correct. And I think if you look for your keywords in your sentence with all of these, and then look for those same keywords in your answers, you'll find that this one is relatively easy. And quizzes are task one to give you a guide, get used to the language, find your way around your porthole. Okay, so I'll go straight to 13. In the table below, provide the legal and ethical considerations of each area and briefly explain how these are applied in organisations and individual practices. That will be in slides, in the ones that we give you, the full suite, and that will also be in your learner's guide. So it will ask for the legal and ethical considerations, and then application in organisations and individual practice. So it might be children in the workplace. So every adult is responsible for the children in the workplace. Solely, they're the ones responsible. Discrimination, how would we apply that? Dignity of risk. That means that even if something, you can see the risk, it is still up to the client to ultimately make that decision. Let's say you're working with someone who's smoking. They say they want to give it up, but they continue to do it. Are you aware of all the health factors around that? And have you spoken to your GP? Yes, I have. I've tried patches. I've tried hypnotherapy. I've tried all of those. Okay, well, you know, that might be something that we could explore further if the timing is right. But we're not going to say smoking's really bad for you. Gosh, they put all those pictures on the packets. How can you possibly bear to smoke when you know that? So that's a no-go zone for us. And that's what dignity of risk is, that they're doing something and it may not be good for them, but it's still their choice. We cannot make anybody do anything. So there has to be dignity in that space. It's like, I understand that sounds hard to give up. So it sounds like you've been really trying lots of different things. So it's about the goal being greater, the reward being greater than the pain or the fear or the consequences. And so there's 13 short answers, multiple choices for you as well. And let me just take you through to what we will be looking at. That's our role play, which we'll cover more of when we're jumping into that space. What I wanted to do is just take you over to task 2 of 3. You can see that there at the top, CHCMHS001, work with people with mental health issues. This issue is around research. What is it like historically? What used to be the norm and where are we now? So you're going to do a research report, and it says you've got to conduct that research using online, so what we give you, plus offline resources, which you also need to be able to search. So about 75% of all of your work comes from us. And then there's around 25% that comes externally. Some is discussed in class. You can get that from your peers. Some are from the videos that we send you, and you can watch those in your own time. That's more underpinning knowledge. And then some are going to some credible websites. So given the topic is mental health, you might go to Black Dog or Beyond Blue or Headspace or Lifeline or 13 Yarn. So there's a lot of sites. You might go to some government and some non-government sites as well. There will be legislation and laws that sit inside our states and territories. So that's the research that you need to do. And when you do your report, you need to back it up with where you got that evidence from and quote that. So you'll need to assess different contexts of mental health work, including key issues and impacts of own attitudes, how we feel. Have we got a bias or an unconscious bias? Have we got a lived experience or someone near to us has? What's our lens over this space? And then in our template we give you, we guide you in the research so that you know what are the topics to add to. So it's not just here's a blank page and away you go. So just make sure that you have included the appropriate references. So it can't be Wikipedia. Can't just do a Google search. You have to have a credible source, which means it's evidence-based and you can back it up. We're going to ask you to put that link on their website so that we can check out your work as well, or if you got it from a book. So with the book, it might be, okay, I can just... Here's two if I was going to be working on these. So one book I've got is, yes, you can talk about mental health at work. Here's why and how to do it really well. So that's if you have, our lived experience. Definitely not going to let me do that while I'm sharing my screen. So that's the name of the book is, yes, you can talk about mental health. So the author is Melissa Doman. So I would have to then say Melissa Doman, and I would need to clarify that that was published. Would give its ISBN number, and copyright was hers. So it was first published by Welbeck Balance in 2021. So I would need to, I like to put in the ISBN, which is every book has its own identifying number. So I would do that. And then when I'm working, sorry, it's really difficult to do that, but you can see I've got tabs. When I study, I leave myself spaces. So I might say this book and pages 84 through to, where am I up to with this one? This is about helping staff talk about lived experience safely, through to 96, where it's relevant about that particular part of what I'm speaking about in my research report. You can copy and paste a quote or an excerpt, but you need to introduce it. You got to say why you're going to do that, where your research took you. You will reference where you took that information and your take on that, the findings, and in conclusion around that. The other book that I would be from Bessel van der Kolk, which he has got psychological trauma, but he also is the author of The Body Keeps Score. So this is a clinical book. And this talks about everything around trauma, from child physical abuse, incest, neurotransmitters, domains of cognitive competencies. It depends the areas that you're interested in and if you're going to be doing that. So if I was researching, I would add more around the neurological pathways. I would do a bit of work around neurodivergent and ADHD, because that's the area that I work in outside, and I'm also neurodivergent ADHD. So I read a lot about it to have a better understanding, to unpack some of that and the work that I do and the clients that I work with. But you'll find that a lot of young people that present before you may have an undiagnosed not so much a disorder, but a differing ability. If we really want to get into safe language, we want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we need to do rather than what that difference might be, to work on the strengths, the things that we can do together. But we can't ignore it, we can't gloss over it, and we cannot minimize it. This is for us to learn and focus in those areas. What kind of youth work do you want to do? What kind of services would you like to work in? And what are you noticing mostly if you are already a sector worker? What is the greatest trend that's happening for you that you're seeing with your clients? Or if you want to do this work, and you want to be able to do this in an evidence-based framework, you need to have good references and models that you work to, rather than it's my gut feeling. I've always been good at listening to people. Yes, you need all of that, but you also need the underpinning knowledge and the sector equivalent standards. What is the benchmark? What is best practice in that space? So there is a limit on your word count. All up, there's between 700 and 1,200 words. If you don't fit it, it will ask you to actually put it into a Word document. I like to do all of mine in a Word document anyway and save that. And then I will take maybe the introduction, the topic where what I'm going to call my research. I might bring out some key points and please refer to the extra document. So I might give them a teaser, and then I will upload that document, or I might just drop in a note and say, please refer to the uploaded document to support my research report for the full report. But oftentimes we'll have a preface or a summary around it, give them an idea what they're about to read. An assessor is going to assess your work. So make sure that you do your referencing. So the objectives of this research are historical development and approach to mental health in Australia, political development, social impacts of mental health, mental illness in Australia, economic impact, and impact of your own attitude, your own lens, your own lived experience, perhaps. Doesn't have to be you, but someone near to you or something that you know. And then working with mental health clients. So we give you those to work with. And so as you walk your way through in your porthole, the historical context of mental health work, discuss the history and approach of mental health care in Australia, provide some examples of mental health myths. So where are you going to start? What year? So your research will say, you know, not much was spoken about mental illness until the 1800s in Australia. And so then it looked very different. What were the institutions? So you'll need to have some history around that. How did they identify it? What did they do to treat it? And then you might go decade by decade, or you might have significant times that changes happened in legislation and the health sector as well. Laws came in about humanity. The Human Rights Commission turned up, equality in that space. Asylums started to shut down. The health professionals started to go in. All of those have factual timelines. That's what your research is going to be able to unpack. The social context and the prevalence. When were those changes? What happens? What are the external and the internal factors? What are the political contexts? But that, a lot of it sits around what the government of the day will have, the National Mental Health Strategy in Australia, discuss the development and objectives. Do your research, put in your search engine, the National Mental Health, so copy and paste that in Australia, and do some research around what are the development and objectives around that. That's where your research is. And then wherever it takes you, read through them, pick the one that is the most credible, reliable, and factual source. And that's what you will reference. So here you have a word limit is between 700 and 1,200 words. Economic. So, you know, the government of the day will fund impact of your own attitudes, how we change our language, if we have a connection to that. You'll do a conclusion. What's the summary of your findings after you've done all that research? And create a concluding statement at the end. You know, my findings around this. And my approach when I first started the research project, however, after discovering this and this, I can see that, or I think that that will be in your own words. And then your experience and how that has impacted, or the work you would like to make an impact on around you as a youth worker and a professional in the mental health industry, which you are as a youth worker, because everyone has a mental health. So we cannot work with only the physicality of someone. We work with their psychological side as well. And we need to have good contacts so that we can have a holistic approach around mental health for our clients. So then, of course, we go into our role play, which I will do more on that. But just to show you, there are 3 parts to that, just very briefly, and we'll unpack more of that at the end of let's see. It's task 2, and task 3 will be what you're working on. And here it says that you will play the role of the worker at first access. So let's just take us up to our overview and instructions. It's not loving that page at all. So behind that darker screen, when you go into yours, it will ask you to go into first access. There we are. So that's a link. Once you go in and open up your portal and that, if you click on that, that's going to take you into a page. And first access is your simulated work. It's an organisation you hypothetically work for with all of your assessments, and you've got a login, which is Hader Institute. It gives you that in the beginning. And your password is Hader 123456. That's easy to remember. So even though you could go to the homepage, and I encourage you all to do that, go to your homepage and it'll tell you about the vision and the mission, and then the board of management, talks about first access, who you are, what you do, your team in the community sector, find out what the services are. They definitely duplicate a lot of different services. So they have domestic and family violence support, dependence and addiction, so AOD, youth at risk, career planning and employment pathways, housing and homelessness, health and wellbeing. So just about every aspect that a young person would come and present, or anyone who studies mental health or AOD or community services or youth work will find something in this webpage as well. So it's simulated. It will offer for you some get involved about us. Okay, crisis hotline. Okay, so in our homepage, it will take us through services as you scroll down, and it will give you its address. So when you're filling in an email and things like that, just know that it'll ask for phone numbers, and it's right there on the home page. You don't have to make it up, because this is the address that we give you for this. So it's fictional, which means it does not exist. And our resource provider, EduWorks, they have this site as part of helping you with your assessment. So if we wanted to have a look at, let me see, let's have a look at mental health, given that we are in a mental health unit. So we'll have a look at here. as well. So it will open up for us some policies and procedures. It will give you, let's say I wanted to refer a young person to a service provider. I like to use your instructions in your scenario might give you one that you have to refer to, and if it doesn't, then tell us what's available in your postcode, because they're the clients that you're going to be working with. So you need to know what services are out there. So you will have policies and procedures. Here you've got case management policy and procedure. And if we need you to refer to a policy and procedure, we give you that in the instructions, especially when you're doing role plays. If they're exiting the service, what are the consumer needs as well? Here we have, consent form is what I would need to be able to fill in. So clients write privacy, confidentiality, and the consent form. Consent to collect and share information. That would be the one that I would want. So here it allows you to download that. Now you're going to use a lot of these documents more than once. This is where opening up your file comes in. So under your original file, you'll have templates and consent and referrals and case plans. They are the sorts of documents that you're going to use frequently. So grab those and then save them so that you can go in. They all have a code, and in your instructions it actually tells you which one to be able to use. So make sure you've checked that code. You might have an incident report and different approaches that we would have with that as well. So that's our session 1, and we're going to move over into part 2. And part 2 will be a discussion with our class around what is mental health and how does it present, what's it like, and how will we frame it. We talk about some micro skills, and I show you some of the slides that we have in our toolbox talk, and this being part 1, but you have a learner's guide. You should be able to open it up in your porthole and see task 1 quiz, task 2 research report, and then task 3 role plays. Next week, in week 2 of the 3 weeks we spend on this unit, we will talk about our research report, and we'll have some examples up there to guide you. You can bring your question and answers in around that research report, and we'll discuss what the differences are over those periods of time. So stay tuned for part 2, and we'll jump into that. And keep in mind that I would like you to be working on task 1 in week 1, task 2 in week 2, so it makes sense and your classes line up with that. And then the final week will be dedicated solely to role plays, which means that you'll be ready to come in and do your role plays with your peers as well. So at 8 o'clock, in the last part of week 2, we have 2 of our learners from our class tonight who are ready to do that role play. So we'll record that, and you will see them do 1 client only each. However, there are 3 clients in this if you're doing that separately and not in our classes, but we'll make sure that we record 1 for you as well. Stay tuned. We have part 2.